Well, howdy, Unky Joe's Playhouse viewers. I got it right this time. I'm so happy. Today I get bored, so I thought I'd install Unraid on the Dell R710. Why? Yeah, so I got bored, and you know what happens when I get bored. I move stuff around. Now, prior to this, I had Unraid on the Intel Core i7-3740, 3470 processor. I had an older Gigabyte board here. In fact, it's down there right now. You see lights flashing? Yeah, that's my Unraid server. But I wanted to put it on the Dell R710. Now, I did this about 3 years ago. And I ran into some problems, but I had a different controller on there. Right now I have the Dell H700 controller on this Dell R710, and it's been flashed into IT mode. I got this from Art of Server a while back. So I just wanted to see if I had any more luck with it. And then I wanted to create a virtual machine and do some performance measurements. So that's pretty much what this video is all about today. So here it is in all of its glorious loveliness. So you can see I've even changed the icon over here to the Dell icon. It's still called Unraid Beast. Now, seeing as this unit has more hard drives than the i7 unit did, the mini tower I was using, I had to upgrade my license key to the Plus version. So you can see up here in the corner, I'm running Unraid OS Plus, if you can see that. So this thing has, let's see. Let's go over the specs. It has two Xeon L5640 CPUs. This is the original Dell R710 I started out with years ago. When I first started the channel, it was my first Dell. I'm just checking the gain on my microphone. I always forget to do that before I record. Isn't that odd? Anyway, so I have 12 cores, 24 threads, 96 gig of RAM in here, so it ought to be able to handle anything I throw at it. And the beauty is I can still use this as a virtualization server. Now, I've tried once before to run Unraid on the Dell R710, and I had some issues with it. The main issue I had with installing it on the Dell this time was getting the Mellanox X2 version 10 gig networking card working with it. And I think that has more to do with the Linux kernel that Unraid is running on than anything else. I can see the network card, but I just decided for the purposes of these videos that I'll just go ahead and use the 1 gig networking adapters in here. So you can see I do have 5 hard drives in here. Actually, let's go over to the main. And you can see I have these are a couple of the white label 2 terabytes, and then I have these old Seagate 2 terabyte drives that just refuse to die. And I've started populating them with some data just to see what kind of speeds I'm getting, transfer speeds. And then I have a Samsung SSD drive in here, a cache drive, and that's also where I'm going to store the virtual machines as we get into doing this. So there are the hard drives on here. So if we go over to Tools and we go over to System Devices, you'll see how it's got the IOMMU groups broken out on here. Now, this is not a real issue anymore because, like I said, I'm not going to be doing a pass-through of a video card. That's not my intention with this. My intention is to try to run. I mean, if you go over to the plugins that I've got, you can see I've got all the Dynamics plugins, the cache directories. But if you go over to the App Store, this is what I really like about Unraid is the fact that it's very similar to how Synology does things. You have all these wonderful apps you can run on this device, and I want to play around with some of this stuff. The other thing you can do is you can run Docker containers, of which I don't have any yet. So here are the shares I have. I just went out and created one called Archive. And what I'm doing is I'm using this storage as archival or cold storage. One of the problems I have with Unraid is its abominable write speeds, and I'll show those to you here in a minute. They're about half what the Synology does. Initially, I had Windows Server 2019 installed on this Dell with Drive Bender, and I was getting 100 megabytes per second read and write speeds, and my Synology will do that, all day. This one, yeah, not so much. I get anywhere from between 45 and 70 megabytes per second write speed, and that's because of the way they do parity. So in theory, I could disconnect or turn off the parity drive, copy all my data to it, and then let parity regenerate. That is an option, but I just decided, to use it the way that most people will use it, which is, to set up all your drives, get your parity built, and then start copying data to it. So this is not going to be a beast in the aspect of copying file copy speed. But for cold storage, it's fine. I'm not going to be writing to this drive or to this device that often. And what I can do is do the transfer of the data to the cold storage in the evening or at night when I'm in bed. So what I've been doing is putting my Unky Joe's Playhouse videos over into cold storage. So the Q drive is the archive drive over there, and you can see I've got about 9 terabyte free over there. So if I just, grab my finished originals folder, so these are the original files that I would upload to YouTube. So I'm just going to click on OK. So it'll go out and count, and I'm going to skip all those that already exist. And you'll see that once it starts copying a few of these files, you'll see the transfer speeds. So initially we're getting 100 megabytes per second, but then as it has to start generating parity on these files, you'll see the write speeds start to drop down abysmally. Now these are large, but larger files like these you should be able to maintain 100 megabytes per second. This one is it's doing better today than it did the other day, but it will get as low as 40 megabytes per second over a gigabit connection. So you need to keep that in mind. Like I say, it's actually not doing, like I said, too bad today, but it is in no way a beast when it comes to write speeds on Unraid. So if we go to our dashboard, that's what I love to see, is those cores being rockin' baby and being used. And then we'll create some VMs on here. I'll show you how easy it is to create a Windows or how involved it is to create a Windows 10 VM. But let's check the copy speeds. So yeah, it's not too bad. For cold storage, I can live with that. Like I say, I can copy these files at night when the system's not being used, because this really does eat up a lot of bandwidth just transferring data. All right, so the first thing I need to do is copy some ISO files from Rivendell, which is my Synology DS918 Plus. I need to copy some ISO files over there so I can install some various operating systems. So I'm going to go ahead and get a 2019 server. I'm going to go ahead and get CentOS. Let's do Debian 10. Let's see, what else can we get? There's Windows 10 Pro 2004 version. And yeah, I think that'll be a good start. So just let me select those, and then I'll copy them. And then we'll go over to Unraid Beast, and we'll paste them here into the ISO folder. And we'll let them copy over. Alright, so we're back over on Unraid. I've copied the data over to the ISO folder. So if we go to the ISOs and go to View here, you should see, yeah, there's the 2019, there's the Windows 10, etc. So I'm going to come up here to the VMs tab. Now I'm going to do this, I'm just going to wing it. I've done this before, but I don't remember all the steps, so I'm going to pretend like I'm you, and I've never touched Unraid before, and I'm just going to try and add it without going and watching some tutorial on it. So let's do add a VM. We're going to do Windows 10. Now, it's very important that you get the CPUs set right. I want to give this 4 CPUs, but what I need to do is come over to the tools, and I need to go to system, I think system devices. So there's my CPU pairing. Now, it's my understanding that you should never use pair 1 under Unraid, because that is reserved for Unraid. So I could do CPUs 1 and 13 and 2 and 14 to give it 4 cores. So I'm going to make a note of that: 1 and 13 and 2 and 14. And you want to have the CPUs in the correct pairs in order to do that. So go back to VM and add a VM, Windows 10. Now, I do remember being told, or Space Invader 1, watching his video, he said sometimes you only want to set it up with one CPU and come back and do your cores later. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and set it up now. So we'll do 1 and 13 and 2 and 14, I think is what we wrote down. Yeah. So that'll give it 4 cores. I also like to give it 4 gig of RAM. Let's see, the BIOS is OVMF. I could do, again, I'm going to leave it at the default. Hyper-V, yes, that's fine. Okay, so the operating system install ISO. So I'm going to click on that, and then I should be able to select my Windows 10 ISO. And it's going to be using an IDE device. Now, Virt driver ISOs. Now, that's something I haven't done. I did not download the virtual drivers. See? You learn by making mistakes. So let's go over to the settings, I think it is, and VM manager. And so we want to enable VMs and the default Windows Virt IO driver ISO. And I want the most recent one, so I'm going to click on download. Okay, so it's downloaded. I'm going to apply. So now that Virt ISO driver should be there for us when we go to set up our virtual machine. So let's start all over again. Add a VM, Windows 10. We're going to use 1 and 13 and 2 and 14. Take off CPU 0. We're going to do 4 gig of RAM. All right. And select our ISO image again. And now it has picked up on our Virt ISO drivers. Now, I see this a lot. They only assign like a 30 gig hard drive for Windows 10, and sweetie, that's not big enough. So I'm going to do about an 80 gig hard drive, and it's going to be a raw. I could do a QCOW too. Again, I'm going to leave everything at defaults. And we can always come back and redo this again if we need to. The graphics card, I'm just going to use VSC because we don't have any video card. Sound card, we don't need to worry about with a Windows 10 virtual machine, because what we'll eventually do is enable RDP, and that will handle the sound. The network bridge is going to use bridge 1, which is fine. I don't want it to start the VM after creation. I don't need any of these USB devices, so I'm just going to click on Create, and we'll see if it's successful. And it looks like it is. So now, let's go over here, and let's start the VM. And then let's go ahead and do VNC Remote. And we need to press any key. Hopefully I've done that quickly enough. Yeah, that was not a fast boot by any means. That took a good 2-3 minutes, so we're not going to dwell on that. We're going to go ahead and install Windows 10. And I'm not going to do the whole install, but I'm going to show you what we need to do to install it and load drivers to get it to work. Hopefully. There we go. So I'm going to do Windows 10 Pro. You can use Home, Enterprise, Education, whatever you want to. I'm going to accept the license terms. And I always do a custom install. Now, here is where we're going to need to load drivers for it to be able to talk to the hard drive or to the virtual hard drive. So we need to click on Load Driver. I'm going to browse. I'm going to go to the Virt IO and expand that. And then I'm going to come down here to VirtIO storage, and then Windows 10, then AMD 64, and it sees the Red Hat virtual VirtIO SCSI controller. I'm going to click on Next. And there's our hard drive now. So click on Next. And we'll let Windows 10 install, and we'll come back when something changes. All right, so it seems we have installed Windows 10. Now all the drivers aren't loaded, and it's searching for a display driver. So the next step is to load all the drivers, and then I believe there's a management agent that we need to load as well. So let's come down here to File Explorer. And it looks like it's trying to load a driver, a video driver. Let's see, here's the VirtIO. So let's see, yeah, there's a guest agent right there. But the first thing I want to do is get the drivers loaded, and I'm not going to do it here. What I'm going to do, however, is right-click on this PC, go to Properties, and then come over here to Device Manager. And then I should be able to click on each one of these and choose Update Driver, Browse, and then we're going to browse to the root, to the VirtIO, and make sure you include the subfolders. And it should go out there and install the drivers for you. So there's the Red Hat VirtIO Ethernet adapter. We're going to install that. And it sees the Middle Earth network, so we'll tell it yes. Now it found something called a QEMU USB tablet, so whatever that is, click on Close here. Alright, now let's go ahead and do the rest of these just the same way. Right click and go to Update Driver, Browse, click on Next. That's the VirtIO balloon driver for the memory. Should refresh here. And then we'll do this one. Right click, Update Driver, Browse, Next. Oh great, our QEMU tablet is ready to use, whatever the hell that is. Okay, so it looks like it's got all those drivers. Now, one more thing I want to do is I want to update the basic display driver to the Red Hat, and I don't know if this is the way to do it. Yes, obviously it is. Red Hat QXL controller, so click on Close. Now, one little naughty thing this does is it turns the mouse pointer white, and we need to fix that. So we'll close all these, and we'll come back to the desktop, right click, go to Personalize, and I'm going to I'm going to search for mouse. There we go. Change the mouse pointer size, and I'm going to change the color back to black. Perfect. So now I can see it. So now, it looks like everything is correct here. Let's see if we can change our display settings. See what the maximum is. Now, right here it says 1024 by 768. But if I do a, how about a 1920 by 1080? No. We can try it. There we go. We'll keep those changes. That's perfect. So yeah, not bad at all. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is install the guest agent. So we're going to come back over here to the VirtIO Win, go to guest agent, and go to the x86 64. Yes. And then we'll probably want to reboot the virtual machine after this. So just for giggles, let's do a restart. That was fairly easy, and I did it all completely from memory. Now we'll get an idea of how fast the virtual machine is when it boots up. I hope. We'll see if it's if it's about, yeah, it's not bad. I can tell you already it's booting up fairly quickly. Cool. Yeah, nice picture. And we'll come over here and we'll do Control-Alt-Delete. Go ahead and log in with my super secret password. And then we can get the VNC controls out of the way. And let's go and see what it thinks. Yeah, the graphics are very good. Alright, so it sees that we have Intel Xeon L5640. Sees we have 4 gig of RAM. Windows is not activated. Let's go ahead and load Task Manager here. Get some more details. Come over here to Performance. Here, let me, I like to sort by CPU usage. And we'll go to our logical processors. So it sees all of our CPUs, 4 of them. It sees all of our RAM, sees our hard drive, and sees our Ethernet. Now what I'd like to do, actually I should have just left that up there, is I'd like to do some performance testing on this thing and see how fast the virtual machine is. But what I want to let it do first is stabilize, make sure everything calms down, all the drivers loaded. Then I want to do my Windows updates, and you don't need to sit here and watch me do that. So I'll get all that taken care of, and then we'll come back and we'll run some performance metrics on here to see what kind of performance we get out of this VM. So even though I don't put too much stock in synthetic benchmark tests, I did want to run a few tests just to give you an idea of what's going on. So over here we have the tests that I ran when using no VNC, and then over here we have the tests that I ran using RDP. So here is the Crystal Dismark. Right here. Let me line this up. And this one I'm going to see if I can open it, and it won't. Yeah, okay. And then let me put them side by side. Have a little patience, young people. I'm an old man. So keep in mind this virtual machine is installed onto an SSD. I've got a cache drive in Unraid. So there are the Crystal Dismark tests. They're pretty darn close with RDP edging out no VNC by a slight, and I mean a slight margin. So let's go to CPU-Z. This one is the no VNC, and this one is the RDP. And you'll see slight difference. I compared them both to an Intel Core Duo. So you'll see this one was a little bit slower than the RDP. And this one was a little faster than the RDP. So a margin of error there, right? Okay. And then, of course, I need to do the Cinebench 15. So there's the no VNC. And here is the RDP. And again, margin of error, pretty damn close. No VNC over here, RDP over here. And then we'll do CB20 is our final test over here. So we got 349 versus 351. Again, margin of error, slight little bit of difference. The big difference for me is, though, I get audio out of RDP and you don't get audio with no VNC. So just, keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say if it's any faster or slower than Hyper-V or VMware. So that's why I do these benchmark tests. Now, of course, these benchmarks mean nothing. It's your own personal experience that matters on this. But I just want to give people an idea of what kind of performance they'll see in a virtual machine using Unraid on one of these enterprise level machines. And keep in mind, this is on a low power Intel Xeon L5640 CPU, and they only run about 2.2 gigahertz. The big deciding factor on your VMs, and in fact on any machine for that matter, is going to be the transfer speed to the hard drive and the RAM. That's going to be your real, indicator of how fast it's going to feel for you. CPU matters, but it matters only when you're, doing certain CPU intensive tasks. And, the more cores and the more RAM you can throw at certain applications, the better. So those were my results on the Dell R710. So now I've got another task for that Dell R710. I always have another task for that Dell R710, but I've moved Unraid back onto this unit, the black unit with the blue LEDs on the floor, into that Thermaltake case, and it's back with the i7-3770 processor, 32 gig of RAM, and these are all 2 terabyte drives from my old array, set up in a RAID array on here, Unraid array. And I also have an SSD drive in there for a cache drive, and that's where I store my virtual machines. So what I've done now is I've created a Windows 10 virtual machine on this Unraid server, and then I'm going to show you the results of the same tests I ran when it was on the Dell. Well, I was wrong again. It's a 3770 i7 processor. i70? Where the hell did I get that from? i7 processor running at 3.4 gigahertz. Now, I ran the same tests. I ran them in no VNC as opposed to RDP, just to see what kind of speeds we get. So here's my Crystal Dismark results. 3994 reads, 699.2. They're all over the place. But those are reads and writes on the SSD drive or on the virtual hard drive that I set up that is actually running on the SSD drive. Yeah, it's a Samsung SSD Evo, 850 Evo SSD drive. Okay, so that's where these results are coming from. Why it's skewing those results and showing I don't know. But anyway, those are my Crystal Dismark results. Now, let's bring up CPU-Z in no VNC, and then we'll compare that to CPU-Z with RDP. Put them side by side here so you can see them. Okay, so again, on the RDP side, just as it was on the the Dell R710, the RDP scores are a little bit higher, but within the margin of error. And you see, one, I compared it to a i7. I compared them both to i7-2600Ks. So, but on the RDP side, it was a little bit faster for CPU-Z. Now, the other thing I want to go look at is Cinebench 15. So here's CB15, no VNC, and here is CB15 RDP. We'll put them side by side. So again, within the margin of error, 291 and 301. But, I prefer RDP. You get sound through there, you get everything. So, I mean, no VNC is fine to get you set up initially, but I would always use RDP to connect to a Windows machine. And then let's, just for kicks and grins, we'll look at CB20 with no VNC as paired to CB20 on RDP. And it's shocking the difference in speed I got between RDP and no VNC. Don't ask me why that is. Let's see. 2-core, 4-thread. 2-core, 4-thread. I'm just comparing apples to apples here. Yeah, 306 versus 624. So I don't know. Maybe it was the way the wind was blowing at that time or something. So you see, if you compare the test results on the Dell to the test results on the i7 processor, they're pretty close. I mean, in a virtual machine, I don't know that you'd notice that difference in speed. It depends on what you were doing with the VM. But we're going to be keeping Unraid on this i7 processor. It's like this board and this CPU were built for Unraid. And it just works very easy. It's a box I can easily move wherever I need to. I can add and remove hard drives from it. And as we learn more about Unraid, it's going to just make a really good box to run this on. Well, there you go. We hope you found the video entertaining and informative as always. Please give us a thumbs up down below. Leave your comments in the comments section. We mirror this content over on Library and Odyssey. And eventually we'll get our BitChute synchronization back up and running. We're working on that. We do have our channel over on BitChute as well. Just hedging all my bets, folks. Donate if you're so inclined. We take PayPal, Patreon, and the join button under YouTube. So either or all of those are available to you. Please don't forget to come back and see us again. Tell everybody you know about us. Subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you don't mind. And don't forget, we'll see you on the other side.